Hello. Is it possible that a superintelligence can know everything that will happen in the future?
I would adopt what we could call a conceptualist model of God's foreknowledge rather than a perceptualist model. A conceptualist model of God's foreknowledge would be more on the analogy of innate ideas. Persons like Plato, for example, thought that we have innate knowledge of certain truths and that education is not really acquiring or learning new truths, but simply bringing to consciousness this innate knowledge that we already have. Now, while that may not be a very plausible knowledge or plausible model for human knowledge, I think it's entirely plausible in the case of God, that God has innately the essential property of knowing only and all true propositions. And so the way he knows the future is not by looking ahead and seeing what's going to happen, it's simply by knowing the truth value of all propositions. He knows which are true and which are false. That includes future tense statements, and so by knowing the truth value of future tense statements, God knows what's going to happen.
That logic can be established, that God can be proven. The God of the importance of sentient welfare, I think, can be proven. So you just saying there is no God, I think it's just bullshit. I think it's quite obvious there's value in the welfare of sentient creatures, and I think it can be logically proven, and I think we substantially have done that. And I certainly include the evidence of my own experience as part of the proof that convinces me. What we're really after in philosophy it's almost, it goes back to the bumper sticker thing. What would Jesus say? No, what we're really after is a theory describing what a complete and perfect intelligence would say. That's sort of what we're after. You're after something, a complete intelligence, a fully knowledgeable intelligence might say.
Science tells us that causality is probabilistic. At the bottom of everything lies chance, randomness, but that doesn't mean that it leads to chaos. For superficial, uneducated minds, the world should be dominated by either chance or order. Why do such minds believe these two possibilities are contradictory? In his book, The World is Built on Probability, Lev Tarasov says, order and regularity are produced from a mass of random events, and this leads to the concept of probability. His book is like a primer for the laws of probability. He gives many mathematical equations illustrating these laws. I will read to you the short preface and the introduction from his book. I may omit some sentences that are irrelevant to the main topic. Preface. A vast concourse of events and phenomena occur in the world around us. The events are interrelated. Some are effects or outcomes of others, which are in turn the causes of still others. Gazing into this gigantic whirlpool of interrelated phenomena, we can come to two significant conclusions. One is that there are both completely determined, in brackets uniquely defined, outcomes and ambiguous outcomes. While the former can be precisely predicted, the latter can only be treated probabilistically. The second, no less essential conclusion is that ambiguous outcomes occur much more frequently than completely determined ones. Suppose you press a button and the lamp on your desk lights up. The second event, in brackets, the lamp lights up, is the completely determined result of the first event. The button is pressed. Such an event is called a completely determined one. Take another example. A die is tossed. Each face of the die has a different number of dots. The die falls and the face with 4 dots ends up at the top. The second event in this case, in brackets 4 dots face up, is not the completely determined outcome of the first event, in brackets the die is tossed. The top face may have contained 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 dots. Maurice Gleiman and Thomas Varga have written an interesting book called Probability in Games and Entertainment, in which they make an interesting remark. When facing a chance situation, small children think that it is possible to predict its outcome. When they are a bit older, they believe that nothing can be postulated. Little by little, they discover that there are patterns hiding behind the seeming chaos of the random world, and these patterns can be used to get their bearings in reality. There are three distinct stages here: lack of understanding of the random at first, then mere confusion, and finally a correct viewpoint. Let us forget small children for a time and try to apply this to ourselves. We shall have to recognize that frequently we stop at the first stage in a simple-minded belief that any outcome can be precisely predicted. The misconception that randomness is simply equal to chaos or the absence of causality has lasted a long time, and even now not everybody clearly appreciates that the abundance of random events around us conceal definite, in brackets, probabilistic patterns. These ideas prompted me to write this book. I want to help the reader discover for himself the probabilistic nature of the world around us, to introduce random phenomena and processes, and to show that it is possible to orient oneself in this random world and to operate effectively within it. This book begins with a talk between myself and an imaginary reader about the role of chance, and ends with another talk about the relationship between randomness and symmetry. The text is divided into two major parts. The first is on the concept of probability and considers the various applications of probability in practice, namely making decisions in complicated situations, organizing queues, participating in games, optimizing the control of various processes, and doing random searches. The basic notions of cybernetics, information theory, and such comparatively new fields as operations, research, and the theory of games are given. The aim of the first part is to convince the reader that the random world begins directly in his own living room because, in fact, all modern life is based on probabilistic methods. The second part shows how fundamental chance is in nature, using the probabilistic laws of modern physics and biology as examples. Elements of quantum mechanics are also involved, and this allows me to demonstrate how probabilistic laws are basic to microscopic phenomena. The idea was that by passing from the first part of the book to the second one, the reader would see that probability is not only around us, but is at the basis of everything. I would advise you to read this book, The World is Built on Probability by Lev Tarasov. It can be found on Amazon, or if you prefer, you can read the relevant chapters in David Deutsch's book, The Beginning of Infinity, or Sean Carroll's book, From Eternity to Here. Bye!